Hello and welcome to Indiepocalypse Radio, your number one source for Indiepocalypse and Indiepocalypse adjacent activities, or just like let's be honest, for this show, we're really diving straight forward into the world of independent art because we've got two guests for you, and for the first time, even they are not related to Indiepocalypse. They may only have, at best, a vague awareness of what Indiepocalypse is, which is kind of like the goal of the show. I've been thinking about how I need to, if I expand on this show and make it a better show that more people check out, then it benefits independent developers to be on the show more. Speaking of the show, I'm the host, Andrew. I run Indiepocalypse through and through, all the way to much of a recent email surprise. Indiepocalypse, in fact, is just me. But this show is not just me. There were plenty of other people here as well, including our first guest, who you may know in this very timely announcement, who had run, produced, put out, what do you call it when you organize? Organize, that's the word I'm looking for. Organize the and guard your children, as I mentioned, the fucking censorship bundle is John Harness. John, how are you doing?
Howdy! Hello, everybody. My name is John Harness, and I use he/him pronouns. Howdy.
Howdy. That is on the stream. We have it there, but I always forget that sort of thing to say it verbally. Mm-hmm. But we get so covering my bases for me.
Hell yeah. So yeah, I'm running the fucking censorship bundle.
And Jam.
You can go find. Yeah, and there's the Sex Games Jam, which are running concurrently this whole month of January. You can check these things out on itch.io. And yeah, I think of myself as like a producer, a thrower of these things, the impresario of them.
Do you throw many bundles and jams, or?
Yeah, I have. I would say so. My kind of claim to fame in the world of indie entertainment and media is that I am involved in the really indie side of tabletop role-playing games. I'm a sometimes designer, sometimes critic. For example, I founded something called Knucklebone Magazine, which has been on hiatus for a while, but we're hoping to relaunch, which is a magazine for thinking about and discussing more or less the indie side of role-playing games.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of the major things that I've done that over time has sort of built my audience for that kind of thing is running events on the itch.io platform, like a bunch of jams. The first jam I ran, which was a kind of major event that influenced a lot of people into getting onto that platform to use them for things like game jams, was called Sad Mech Jam in 2019. And since then I've run, I don't know, something like 10 other jams. And what I mean by a jam is like you set a timer, there's a launch date and an end date, and it's essentially an invitation for game designers to riff on a theme or a topic or something for that set amount of time. So Sad Mech Jam was, hey, remember all those anime that we like that are about giant robots and sad teenagers? Make weird little games about that. And that was that just like really hit a spot for a lot of people, and so that jam is credited with getting a bunch of indie designers onto itch, and now itch is a sort of major force, a major platform, at least in the world that I inhabit of indie games. Lots of people use it as their storefront and then do jams, and there's been a really robust community of people running jams, thinking about jams, and making really small analog games in that sort of context. So the thing that I'm here to talk about today, the fucking censorship bundle, is another one of the is a bundle on that platform. So we've got games that already exist and we wrap them together and put them on sale. You can buy all those games for $10 right now, and then there's a concurrent jam. And so the idea behind those things is that the fucking censorship jam comes about because a different games platform, Game Jolt, recently joined the infamous club of online platforms that are purging their sex games, adult games, porn games, whatever you want to call them.
No, John, to be fair, that's because they have a platform of 13 to 15-year-olds who don't want that on their platform.
Yeah, well, really it has to do with the fascistic monopolies that we deal with in the world.
Nothing to do with credit card processors or...
Yeah, it all has to do with that, and it has to do with places wanting to get their app on the
Yeah,
Apple,
because
the App Store, right? Yeah. And
as
so
we
they're
know
like,
from
wow, these things are
yeah.
potentially controversial. We should get rid of them, which of course is really just sort of backdoor politics that hurts sex workers, queer people,
Yeah.
all sorts of other people get the sort of trickle down shitstorm of trying to hide that kind of stuff or put that stuff on different other platforms, things like that.
Because I,
So
I
anyway,
know very much as being a teen at one point in my life, none of us knew what sex were. We all hated it. I mean, we didn't want access to it at all. We weren't.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of gesturing a kind of generational divide right now, right? Is that what's going on?
No, I'm being sarcastic. Is what I'm being.
Right. And I'm saying no, it's
Yeah.
not really about that. There's actually like big political forces at play.
Yes, of course.
That are, you know,
As
serious and malicious, and so that's why we're doing the jam. So
Yeah.
the bundle, right? So we're raising money. My first goal, when I talked to a group, so we're supporting a group called Swap Behind Bars, which is a sex worker support and advocacy.
Yeah, and swap with an
advocacy
O,
group.
right?
Yes, SWOP, the sex worker. Oh my god, I'm gonna forget. Outreach program, I think, and they're really cool, and they serve sex workers who are criminalized and currently or formerly incarcerated. And so I was just like, hey, this purge of games happened on yet another platform. As someone who makes games that have to do with sex and that kind of thing, that ticks me off. Fuck all those guys.
Yeah.
I got angry about it, and I said, hey, I know what I can do. I can try and raise a little money for some group that is fighting against this kind of thing. So I talked to the people at Swap Behind Bars. They're really cool. They're very supportive and thankful for the whole project. I told them when we started, I was like, maybe we'll make $50, maybe we'll make $200. I don't know. Currently, we're sitting at $7,715, which is way more than I ever thought would happen. So
yes, that's a good chunk of money there.
Hell yeah, yeah. I don't know exactly the same numbers. I haven't looked at their budgets, but based on what we talked about with the organization, Swap Behind Bars, that is a sizable chunk of money that really directly impacts their operating budget.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about it, and it's just super excited that lots of people have really taken to the project. Things like this can be potentially controversial, and it's the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, it's just been a platform recently about there's been a lot of charity bundles on itch. I think when you originally had that racial justice bundle that really they existed for a while, but that sort of I think kicked it off in terms of broader understanding of, hey, you can just use this as a charity platform.
That is true, although I was doing charity platforms before that.
Oh, yes. Most certainly. The tabletop community, I feel, has a very different, from what I've seen them interact with, a very different perspective on itch than I think the video game developing community does.
Yeah, tell me about it. I don't know anything about video game makers.
There's 0 platforms for them to publish stuff, whereas tabletop is a PDF, dude. You can put a PDF everywhere.
Well, I think tabletop designers have different opinions than you do about
Sure.
yeah, it has been nice that itch is, you can just put whatever file format you want on, basically. So it's been super nice, yeah.
I think there's a far more dread when Game Jolt goes down, because there's oh god, there's only one platform left now that has open access for me to put games on.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's some others, but there's...
Monopolies suck, everybody. Did you know that? Corporation's bad.
As it turns out, consolidating all of the money in 3 things allows 3 people to make decisions, and...
Yeah. So with this, with the bundle and with the jam, it was okay, they got rid of some sex games. So what we're going to do is 2 things. We're going to say, guess what? Sex games exist. The people who make them exist. We're cool. We make interesting work. Here it is. Fuck you. And also great, you got rid of them. Well, we'll take that as an invitation to make more of them. The way that jams work is generally you get a bunch of people to join, and then all the games sort of come in right before the deadline. So if you go to the page right now, there's not a lot of games up, but there's sufficient people signed up for it that there should be, by the end of it, I don't know, 25, 50 games submitted that will be new to the world, sex games of all different varieties. And when I say sex games, I mean things that are trying to be sexy, but I also mean things that are not really trying to be sexy, but are trying to deal with sexual themes or other kind of adult themes like that.
Yeah,
really interesting ways.
Sex is a very broad. I mean, it can be anything. It's just It's not a genre.
Yeah, and I had a friend of mine was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a game that's about censorship, and they proposed a really interesting idea that had lots to do with censorship and what it's possible under global conditions to write about and think about. And then I was like, yeah, but like there's got to be a sexy part somewhere, and they totally forgot about that, which I was kind of thrilled by, the idea that people are both excited about giant horse cock,
Yeah.
or other things that are in this bundle, but also, are taken to the idea of making games that deal with censorship and topics like that. Super fun.
Yeah, because the two are like, yes, it's very the two are intermingled forever.
Mm-hmm.
We have America, especially, has a real attitude about sex, and
Yeah. And the reason I'm involved in this, I'm not a sex worker per se, but my life interacts with this sex work and sex industry in lots of different ways as a consumer of pornography and other things.
yeah,
I'm a gay man, and a lot of my like high-level theoretical artistic interests are in like the histories of gay men and related populations, and how those communities have been historically criminalized, marginalized, forcefully assimilated into heterosexuality and other things like that. And so these, that's why when all this is going on, I've been paying attention to, FOSTA SESTA, the, incredibly harmful legislation passed a few years ago that
yeah,
is one of the inciting incidents behind all of these purges, all the way to when Craigslist got rid of its personal ads, which directly made it harder for sex workers to have
and
safe business and things like that. So all these things are related, and that's why when this started, I was like, fuck this again.
Yeah, because it's very much it creates like those policies basically create a thing where it's like you have to hop from platform to platform until the platform, once it gets too big, it will excise you, because then it's like, well, now we're in a risk of something. Credit card payers won't do the things. We have to do our stuff in other ways, and then it's like, well, I guess we need to find our new platform now that's small enough to accommodate us until we boost it up to enough to where they can get VC money again. It's just a real a whole new kind of disrespected labor societally for sex workers.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's true. I think it's a historically shat upon word.
Yeah, no, I'm saying they discovered a new form of labor for people to shit upon, which is boosting up your tech company through through growing your platform. That's another form of exciting labor that they've produced that is now being shit upon as well.
Yeah, and maybe I should say that there is some discourse right now going on in lots of places probably, but especially in tabletop land, of Kickstarter getting into NFTs, and now a bunch of people are calling for creators to sort of get off of Kickstarter and things like that. And there's a lot of angles to that.
Yeah.
NFTs are bad, whatever. But what I'm getting at is that my relationship to itch, a lot of what I've done for the last few years utilizes itch as a gaming platform, but I agree with the idea that we should not invest our hopes and dreams into platforms that will be affected by these macro forces in the world in ways that we might not like, right? So I've been saying itch lets us do this kind of stuff for now.
Yes.
Let's celebrate that and make sure that the people at itch can see that people use their platform for this kind of content. They appreciate that itch does not have incredibly stringent guidelines about content or whatever, and that we're using it and we appreciate that. Let's make sure that that's known, but let's also continue to explore other places to do this, other ways, other models to explore,
right? Because you never know when it'll go away.
Yeah, and in tabletop land, everybody was on G Plus for a bunch of years. Google Plus, does everybody remember Google Plus? No, but it was very popular among indie tabletop designers for a long time, long after most people had already left the platform. And so when that closed, there was a few years where people were constantly talking about, well, where do we go? What's the new platform we can use? Where can we kind of congregate? And itch is not the same as Google Plus and has a lot of different characteristics, but I think there's a strong argument to be made for Sad Mech Jam, an early game jam that I, with Takuma Okada, ran. to say that jam kind of answered that question by getting a bunch of people to adopt itch as a place to put their games. And so, I say all that little history lesson is just to say, like, we came to itch only a few years ago in a kind of nomadic context. Okay, we need a new home. Where do we go? Where do we put our stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that will eventually happen again for nefarious or perfectly quotidian reasons. So.
Yeah. Who knows how much?
But right now, you can put your cocksucker games on itch, and we should all be happy about that. Get them.
And in the right situations, they will be happy to promote them when it suits the discourse. They'll be like, "We've got them all here."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very open platforms. I'm very wary. That's why I personally do not produce Indiepocalypse as a bundle, and why I produce it as like a zip file, as a singular store item. It's so that at any point, like if it disappears or changes their mind or does something, like if I functioned it as a bundle, it would simply disappear. But now it's like, well, I can just sell it on my own website, or I can move it to any other platforms that'll upload zip files,
Yeah, totally. I totally get it. Before we had this convo, I was trying to remind myself about some of my past jams and stuff that I've done, and I was clicking through some of them, and I noticed that in one of them, the image no longer works, and some of the files have gone away, and I don't know what that might just be a glitch somewhere, but I was like, oh yeah, I should document these in a way that's not just assuming that itch will be there forever. I should make an archive of what this stuff looks like, not only because it's at this point essentially part of my resume, but also because I think there's cool stuff happening here, and we should keep that and celebrate that. And if it just evaporates like GeoCities or something,
yes,
we'll have lost a piece of gaming history as far as I'm concerned.
Right. That's why don't put all your information on your Discord or whatever. That's the frustrating thing. It's like, oh, a little piece. Someone's like, hey, check out this thing on our Discord. And it's like, no, just put it. You were already typing words. Just paste those words where you were already typing them.
Well, sure. I think it is about putting things in a variety of places, right?
Yeah. But locking them into one singular place.
Yeah. Bad.
Especially one that's software, Because the Internet Archive or whatever, there's no the Wayback Machine is not caching Discord because it can't.
Yeah. And this reminds me, I think if people are interested in this kind of thing, they should look into some stuff that's going on right now in indie role-playing land. There's a ton of people. I won't list names because this is just a really currently roiling discussion going on. So just go get on Twitter and look around and you'll run into it. But there's, because of Kickstarter, maybe not directly because of this bundle, but it's in the air. Hesitation or worry about platforms. So people in indie space are really trying right now. There's kind of a movement going on to make new co-ops. I can't tell you how many tweets I see going around right now.
I saw one about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, but people really, actualizing long-held ideas about co-ops, trying to explore different platforms, just to get onto a multitude of platforms, so it's not all eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
We've been talking about. So I think that discussion is really cool, and the discussion about Kickstarter, I think, is really interesting. No, but I haven't actively seen a active call for everyone to boycott Kickstarter over NFT stuff. But I think it's just this is really waking up. One of the things that's waking up people's attention to these kind of broader dynamics.
Yeah, I feel also broadly speaking, people's NFT hate only seems to extend so far until it affects something that they really like, and then there's suddenly less quiet about it.
We're already compromised all the time by the military powers that rule the world, and that sucks, right?
Right.
Which is why we have to actively try and make spaces as best we can.
Right.
Acknowledging that we are all already compromised in what we're doing, we still have to be trying to live a just and a life that seeks abundance for everybody. Right?
To live a truly uncompromised life, one must first boycott the universe.
Yeah, maybe. Hell yeah.
It's all there's rot all the way down. We invented rot, and it's a beautiful mess of a thing.
Well, I don't know if we invented rot. I think specific groups of people invented a bunch
Sure,
of
sure, sure, sure.
fancy
I mean, as humans, we're fantastic
Yeah.
beings of creating our own problems when we could just not have those problems.
Yeah. Again, I reject that idea. I don't think it's humans as a whole that have done that. I think it's specific people.
Yes, yes,
Those
no.
people, those people are the rich and the generals.
Yes, yes. Of course, no. I don't mean as like we all collectively decided this. I mean, as a human being, it's a decision a person made, a very small number of people likely made. And they're just like, well, what if I had more houses?
Yeah, and fuck them. That's what I'm here to say. Fuck them.
Bold stance here on Indiepocalypse Radio. We're taking bold stances against the rich. Like you don't, as it turns out, you don't need all that money. It's kind of pointless, you know.
Yeah.
If we just gave it to everybody, why not? It feels like such an easy solution to a problem, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe this is just sort of a closing thought here. I worked for a long time in the world of art museums. My other gig is being an independent contemporary art curator.
Yeah.
And so I was laid off around this time last year by the greedy, racist leadership of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, whom I mean specifically Madeline, the director, Michael Darling, former chief curator, and a bullshit middle manager named Claire Rude. Those people laid off a bunch of people in a deeply racist way. And I bring that up to say that after that, I spent a long time over the last year in meetings with artists and art administrators and people who had been laid off or similarly affected by the greed of the rich.
Yeah.
And just a change is really in the air about this. I mean, everybody is seeing the headlines about the renewal of the sort of American labor movement and things like that.
Yes, yeah.
But something I'm thinking about is just like the tiny, small changes that we can all make in our lives. I'm not advocating for some sort of like lifestyle anarchism. That's not what I mean. But I'm saying like I am an independent curator, and I just made a goal that said the discourse about like exposure for artists in art shows, that's just not going to fly anymore. So every time I'm in a meeting with someone and we're trying to put together a show, I say, how are we going to pay these people?
Yes.
Simply to like put their painting up on the wall for 2 weeks. How are we going to pay them? And people are like, well, we can't really do that, blah blah blah. And I'm like, that just doesn't fly anymore, folks. Like,
no, you found a strong ally in paying people for literally everything. I had someone. Yeah. Whenever people are like, oh, can I help? I'm like, no, because I don't have money to pay you, and nobody works without money.
Yeah, and we got to figure it out. I've done 2 shows, or I'm in the midst of doing another show where we're paying people, and I'll admit to you, I think I'm not paying them as much as I would like to.
Sure.
We are
no.
Making the shift to saying no, you have to pay people, and just like that's my stated goal when I go into some of these meetings, and so far it's paid off twice, and I've put checks in the hands of 20-something artists, and I feel great about that.
Yeah. I think it's also one of those situations where the people who are very passionate about paying everyone probably don't have all the same amount of money, you know?
Yeah. And
so like it's like you can pay what you got, and I think it's a good and noble effort just to pay whatever amounts you can pay.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a sort of dynamic about. It's not exactly a strike, but the idea of saying, okay, you don't got money, well, you don't get a show then. And then people go, what?
Right.
But we were going to have a show. And it's like, nope, not anymore.
Yeah.
And so I bring all this up not to like enter into a long discussion about the world of galleries and fine art and how it's all just an extortion scheme for the hyper rich. Although that is all true. But just to say, like, I think all of these things are related, and I'm super excited to be doing part of this kind of work or adjacent work in the world of in the tiny little world of the tiny pond of indie tabletop role-playing games and video games, and to be doing that on itch, and to be trying to get money in people's pockets, and I think it's great.
Yeah, I've been seeing it, I've been saying it. There is a bubblingness about like just independent workers, independent artists all throughout the world, which is kind of people. There's the swing is going back the other way, where everyone is quite sick of corporations at this point. I mean, I'm sure some people are definitely, loving all their mergers, but there's a lot more people are very upset, very annoyed with it all, and very quite done with it. And I think you're going to see that like materialize more and more in these like this coming decade.
Hell yeah.
of people being like, people not just sharing it, but earnestly believing the idea of "fuck you, pay me,"
Mm-hmm.
But John,
Oh,
yes,
well, let me have one more closing thought. I'm sorry. Well, I was just going to say, one of the cool things about jams, I think, is
yeah,
that they can be a place where we're raising money and stuff like that through this kind of technology and the platform. But also, jams are great because they can be just a place of creativity.
yeah,
Some of the best jams I've seen are not about raising money, or they're not about doing anything like that. They're just an invitation for people to do that. And I think that we need to be joyfully engaged in that kind of work also, and to know that, yeah, it's about being paid by the rich people who stole the world from the rest of the world, yeah, defo, but to also maintain space in our own lives and in our communities for just sort of free expression, for creativity as a thing you can do when you're not being paid, when you're not on the
yes,
clock, to
yeah,
push back against the monetization of all of our interests and hobbies. I just started making electronic music. It's the shittiest white boy electro in the world, and
perfect.
I am trying desperately not to monetize it, right? To just keep it a place where I
Right.
can shit out some stuff and enjoy myself. So
Yeah.
so anyway, I think that if people are interested in doing that in the world of game design, they should look at itch. They should look at game jams. You can look at the sort of big long list of game jams on itch right now and find something that's cool. Itches are all different. Read the text on them and see what they say about rules and expectations and what the invitation is really. And if you want to say fuck you to censors and big corporations, and also to put money directly in the hands of some incarcerated or formerly incarcerated sex workers, I invite you yourself,
Yes.
to go buy the fucking censorship bundle, and also, if you want to participate in the sex games jam.
Yes, it is. It is linked within the chat already. I'm
Great.
way ahead of you
Hell yeah.
on that one. And now, John, before we get wrapped up into the idea of game jams and like talking about people charging money to enter game jams and the increasing monetization and commercialization of game jams, I will bid you adieu because I could. That is my. I could go on forever about my particular issues with that, which are many. Um, but thank you for being here, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll
Glad.
just stick around for a while.
Yeah, stick around for a little while. We're gonna go to break. We'll be back in like a minute 50 with our next guest. Until then, goodbye. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Best Coast with Crazy for You. Unfortunately, the Best Coast not invited to the newest Super Spreader event with all your favorite old emo bands. And also, like, Car Seat Headrest and I'm sure some other modern bands. They got, like... Do I... See, that's one of my problems with music, where I'm like... That seems like rather low billing on the chart for the old CSH. And I thought they were, like, big. At least in, like, a very specific scene. Maybe it is just a very specific scene that they're big, and I don't know what is big music. But anyway, enough of that. We have another guest here, and like I said, brand new, fresh guest. We don't only have contributors here on Indiepocalypse Radio. We also have other people who may not even have anything to do with video games. Because our next guest is Matt from Starfruit Books. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. I'm doing fantastic. I'm thinking about food I'm going to be having later because it's mid-show. I've been talking a lot and I'm hungry.
Yum.
But, fuck, what? I was going to fall into my usual question, but that doesn't work because my usual go-to question for contributors, and it is how do they hear about the zine, but that doesn't work. But actually, so tell me, give me a quick overview. What is Starfruit Books for people who are unaware?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name's Matt. I am the founder of Starfruit Books. We are an independent publisher. We focus on manga or Japanese comics. For the most part, we do work directly with authors to localize their work and get it released in English. So far, we have a handful of digital-only titles. However, we did get into print titles last year, so we've got our fourth one coming out soon here.
perfect time to get into print.
Yeah. Yeah, print is great, minus the, all the delays.
I love my weekly emails from Right Stuff saying my book has been delayed.
Yeah, and it is real. Like, people say, "Oh, I'm skeptical on that," and no, it's real. Printers saying, "Hey, we're out of that paper, and get in line," pretty much.
Yeah, yeah.
It's definitely happening. I mean, a few of the printers that we're using are kind of seeing a little, I think they're seeing a little bit of relief now. But yeah, it's definitely happening.
People are learning that things can, in fact, production can run out.
Oh yeah, big time, especially when we're relying on, materials from overseas. So, yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Manga has definitely taken off. The industry is much bigger than it was before.
Yeah.
It's doing pretty well, along with books in general. Are doing pretty well. During the pandemic, one of the things that coming out of the pandemic, our book sales are doing pretty well.
It turns out when you're locked in your house, you need to find something to do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I got started in a sense, but I've personally been a manga fan, let's see, since I was like, 12 or 13. I'm now going to be 32. So quite a long time.
Yeah, that is more than half your life.
Yeah, I've been collecting, since about then. So I've got a nice little collection going. I've sold some over the years or, traded and stuff.
Yeah.
Do
you remember what got you into it as a child? Like, do you remember your introduction?
So I watched whatever was on TV back then. I remember, like, in the morning we had Garfield, and then Sailor Moon was on before or after.
Okay.
So I did watch that. Yeah, and then so I'm in Florida, and there used to be a store called Anime Nation.
Yeah.
They were also like an online shop as well, but they started as like a retail store, and they had one over close to me, and they did a grand opening, and I just remember being fascinated. I was a kid, and they were giving away. I got some cool anime VHS tapes for free, so that was pretty cool. And then they closed that, and then moved to a smaller store in Tampa. That's when they focused, I think, more on online sales.
Yeah.
And then my mom worked right there, so when I went to work with her, I would always just go there forever.
So I got to ask inside information. Do you know Miami Mike?
No.
Did you get? Were they his fan dubs? What if they were Miami Mike fan dubs in there?
Hey, you never know.
A little piece of history.
But yeah, no, yeah. It's definitely been like a passion of mine, I guess, collecting and just being completely absorbed in the anime and manga world.
Do you have a number? Do you track your numbers? Do you have like a digital library so you know?
No, that's funny. So that I was talking in a server earlier about that, and I honestly don't. I'm not very good. I'm not the most organized person. I can say that. And I definitely have not kept track. But I've read a lot over the years and watched a good amount as well. Probably read more than watched.
I've very personally transitioned to reading over watching most things, or at least comic-related things, especially like, anime that is adapted. I'm like, well, I'll just read the original version.
Yeah, I just find it a little more, I don't know, like more in-depth and also convenience as well.
Yeah.
I seem to always be on the go, so I like to take, something with me, either my iPad to read digitally or to, just having a book with me at all times kind of thing, so.
Yeah, and, it's not, I feel like it's not, I think I would have looked sideways or been looked sideways at if I was like on the train with a manga, but it feels more, I don't know. Everyone just does it now.
It's definitely a little bit more, I guess, accepting in a way.
Yeah.
I know, like, growing up, like, people looked at me because I always had, like, a manga with me, or I was reading one, and like, what is that? And then it's backwards, that kind of stuff. And you're like, oh, God. Like, so, no, I totally understand that. That, and I mean, depending on the content, there's definitely some that I would not bring in public.
Yeah, sure. But
just because. So, yeah.
But that's the secret of like textbooks is they can be as filthy, but someone has to really get in there and read them. But when you have images, it's kind of like, well, I can't like hide these images so well as I could just a book.
Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Did I lose you for a moment? Oh wait, no. I can hear you when you said, Can you still hear me?" But wait, can you not hear me? Hello. Uh-oh. Wait. 1 second. Uh-oh. Hello, I'm back. Hey, you can hear me?
Are you back?
Yes. Okay, so
Okay.
weird thing. I was still going out because I'm not looking at Discord. I'm looking at OBS, and OBS. I was still my microphone was still going out.
Yeah, I could hear. I couldn't hear anyone.
Yes, but I'm back.
Okay.
I think I might have just like knocked my thing out a little, and it was too. I knocked it too far out for. That's a weird thing to knock it too far out for Discord, but not for OBS. But who knows?
Well,
Anyway.
hey, at least we're still here.
Yes. Anyway, it's my technical stuff. I was just saying it's easier to if you're on the train to read a textbook that is filthy, because it's harder for someone to really get in there and read it.
That's true.
And it's a little different for me to like open up like, hey, I'm just gonna you're not gonna read like the Passion of Gengor Tagame on the train, you know?
No, hopefully not. I mean, if I saw someone reading, I would totally go up and talk to them.
Well,
I'd be like, "Hey, what are you reading?" But you know,
oh, it's about these guys, you know, who like to have fun. What I should have sold my speculative copy when I had the chance.
oh,
Now Fantagraphics is putting it back out.
yes, they are.
There was a time when the original like hardcover was like going for like $300 on eBay.
What a time! Yeah, no. Speaking of that, what was I looking at the other day, and it really had a big price jump on it. Fantagraphic, Heart of Thomas, I think it was.
Oh yes, I did.
Yeah.
I have also got Heart of Thomas. I think.
I do also, and I just happened to look, and it was going for a couple hundred. I want to say, and that's just oof.
Yeah, like a thread or somebody was talking about like, hey, what are your expensive, your hard to get manga and your dream things, and people are saying a bunch of books that I own. I was like, Totera is super expensive. What?
Oh wow. Yeah, no, it's definitely weird. Like stuff that you think would not be, it is.
Yeah, because I never know like what is like. It's impossible to tell like, and I think that out loud when I get like independent books. I'm like, is this thing worth $1 million or is it valueless? You know?
I would say definitely for indie public, in the manga realm, smaller publishers definitely buy that manga.
Yeah.
Because print runs are definitely smaller and not always promised for a reprint.
Yeah, and like indie press in general, very much the book they print, it funds the next book.
Sure does.
It does not fund reprints of that first book.
No, definitely not. And I'm glad you said that because it's definitely a great clarification. I mean, reprints are. I have something coming up that will probably need a reprint, and I'm just like, trying to work that out. But it should be all right.
Yeah.
But it should be all right. But it's a nice thing to have, a nice issue to have.
Yeah. It's also nice. That's why it's good to have like digital and physical.
Definitely, yeah. I'm all for digital reading and digital copy, so I like to release digitally as well.
I'm very bad at digital reading. I was like, I put them in like folders, and I just never like. Well, I don't have like a tablet or anything, and I feel like I could probably do it if I had that. I just have a computer.
Okay. Yeah, no, I know, I get it. It took me a bit to kind of get into reading digitally. I mean, I've found it easier, manga is much more accessible these days than it used to be.
Yeah.
Especially with digital alternatives, you've got the Shonen Jump app. What's that, like $2 a month?
Yes, it's like practically free.
Yeah, it's worth it. I mean, same as like right now I use Key, of course. They're a great reading service for like $5 a month and $4.99 or something like that, and they have such a great, it's nice. It's just a nice library to kind of just go and read as much as you want whenever you can. But no, definitely, it's definitely hard to get into, I would think. Reading digitally, it's there. I mean, I like reading a print book, of course. I don't. There's something about turning the page.
Right.
So, and actually like holding the book in your hand. So I get it.
And I'm also very particular about like I don't shelve my books until I read them, so I don't want massive piles building up.
Oh yeah, no, I have that problem. I have piles of books because I ran out of shelf space too, so I'm like, oh.
Oh well, I just keep finding more places to stick shelves in lieu of human occupancy.
There you go.
I just like, well, it's time for another trip to IKEA to buy that shelf and fill it.
Yeah, I gotta go get one too. I gotta go actually. I think next week we're supposed to get a shipment of books in. Yay!
Yeah.
So that'll be pretty cool. So I gotta go to the airport to go pick those up, and there's an IKEA right there. So if I have room, I will grab books and bookshelves.
Well, speaking of all these bookshelves and your releases and all this stuff. We actually have a question here for you. A rare Indiepocalypse question, which is from Antonio Robles, and it says, "Hi, I wanted to know if there will be both digital and print copies of the manga you will be working on. Also, if there is a work with we've got a lot of questions here. Let's break it down one at a time.
Yeah.
So the first one, like print to digital, you kind of said, yeah, you love to do it.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So all of our titles that are print will be released digitally as well. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, check us out, starfruitbooks.com. Any titles that are purchased digitally through our website are DRM free.
Yeah.
Once you buy it, you do own it.
It's just a PDF.
Yeah, so there's a PDF in there. I think most have a CBZ file as well, which is just a zip for comic readers, but yeah, definitely. We will have some titles available on like Amazon through Kindle. However, best bet is buy directly through us. You'll get the best quality, of course.
Yeah.
Not compressed, DRM free. You own the files pretty much. It's you. It's all you. So yeah, definitely do that. And yeah, for all of our print titles, we will have a digital option. And we're also working on trying to get most, if not all, of our digital library in print as well.
Perfect, because I had realized that I had like purchased some of your books like forever ago, but they were PDFs, and I was like, oh, shit, if he's on the show, I should probably like actually read one of these.
Oh yeah.
so I read through like the first volume of Pop Life, and I was like, damn, I wish I had these like in books, you know?
Yeah. So I'm actually, that's funny. Okay, so before next question, let's talk about that. So with Pop Life, and digital only titles. So. Okay, so Tampa, like I said, I'm in the Tampa area. We have our anime convention in July, MetroCon. It's not huge, I wouldn't say, but it's decent. I think it at one point was the largest in Florida. I don't think it is anymore.
Yeah.
But so I'm thinking, like, how am I going to sell digital products for digital only books? Like, so I'm thinking of doing like exclusive art cards.
Yes.
Or bookmarks or something for those digital titles. So at the convention, hey, you purchase that. If you purchase the digital title, I'm going to give you this physical bookmark. Of course, I would extend that to buying it from the web store as well.
Yeah. At
some point, but I guess kind of test run it at the convention. So I think I'm trying to find a way to incentivize digital titles.
I
don't know. I think I like free shit.
Yeah.
So,
I'll say as someone who literally does that, it works. People will buy them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that, and also with our titles, any full-size releases, like full-size books, because we are also doing one-shots. Some are like 50 pages or less.
Yeah.
Where, like full-size manga is usually like 160-plus pages. So any of the full-size stuff is definitely going to be coming with some sort of art card, postcard, or something like that. Exclusive for each book. It won't be a pre-order bonus. It'll be just for, I'm going to probably print as many cards as, are in the print run of the book.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty economical to do that. So definitely.
Yeah. I had the issue where it's like I could print like 20 copies of like a single issue of Indiepocalypse, or I could print 20 postcards for literally every copy I have, which is like 25 copies or something. And I was like, well, I'll just print postcards, and then people will buy them because they want the thing, and it's nice to have like a cool little art card.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. I like it. Something
Yeah.
that I wish, I know some other publishers do it as well on occasion. And I'm all for it.
So question part 2 of this. I think there's 3 parts. Yes. No. This is only the second question. The other parts were, it's great to have a new publisher on the scene and looking forward to the Hideshi Hino manga. But the second question. Oh, also a thanks, an exuberant thanks. But to get if a work has controversial content, will it remain intact, or will there be any changes to the dialogue or content?
Oh no, I don't like censor. Like no, none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no censoring. So to kind of explain the process. After getting translated into editing and all that good stuff, before it gets released, we send it back to the author. They have to give their final stamp of approval to make sure that they like it. So we are doing a few boys' love works that are a little more explicit.
Yeah.
Japan does have, issues with that. Censoring, per se. So there's some, dick censored, stuff like that. We're trying to see now if we can get the uncensored files, because we should be okay.
Yeah.
Because, no. I don't like censorship, so none of that.
Now, here in the West, we don't have any bars anywhere. We just let it all hang out.
Yeah, no. There's no... I mean, it's a penis. Come on.
Yeah.
We don't know what it is. Like, come on. We can see it. Like, it's not the first we've seen. Like, let's go.
But a discreet little bar, I don't know what it is anymore.
Yeah, like, oh no. Don't throw me out there. So, no. But definitely trying... for any censored works that are coming from Japan, censored image-wise, we are definitely trying to get those uncensored files.
Yeah.
And then, no, we will not be censoring or any of that stuff. So.
Yeah, because it's always like that is a hot button topic among the Japanophiles on the internet. They're always worried that, like, oh no, they're removing the things that I like or something, and it's always like, I don't. It's tricky because, like, sometimes it's censorship, sometimes it's like something does not translate the same way, and like to the fact where it like loses the intent of when you translate it that way. I think there was like a video game where an acronym for like a company or something within the game was KKK, which plays a little differently in America,
Yeah.
So they had adjusted it. And people were like, censorship. It's like, no, because that warps the author's intent. And, like, I'm sure they're not married to this acronym.
Right.
But it's always, it's a tricky thing about what people mean by when they say censorship. And usually, like, man, America has no particular issues with censorship. It's more like, presumably companies trying to fit something into a very specific like market and like age demographic that results in censorship.
I know that that has happened. So for instance, look at Sailor Moon,
right? Or
anime back in the day. They even redrew some of it and stuff like that to make it more westernized in a sense.
Those who grew up in the 4Kids generation,
Exactly. I mean okay, so I like the not like, I can't say I like, but I didn't mind the 4Kids stuff. I used to watch that shit all the time for One Piece.
Yeah.
I used to watch that all the time. And then what was the other one that they did that I? Oh, their Kamen Rider that they did. Loved it. It was so terrible, but it was so good.
Okay, I would say by then I was an edgy ride or die fan sub teen who was like having no part of this weird hammer. But like that hammer gun is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's such a bizarre workaround. Like, I guess like infinite respect to the person who came up with that nonsense.
Yeah, I don't really get it.
It's very easy to turn like a cigarette into a lollipop, but it's very very roundabout to like what yeah. But now we're living in this unhinged era,
Oh yeah.
We can have anything we want. we can load up Tubi. We can watch Belladonna of Sadness.
There you go. Good choice.
It's a treat. That is a movie. I don't recommend that movie for everyone, but
it is great.
Yeah, the end especially is like a real cavalcade of wonderful animation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen that in a while. Maybe I should. I did watch it somewhat recently, but I don't remember how long ago it was. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I try to revisit it every so often, but yeah, definitely.
It's like I think I ended up watching it off of Katie Skelly, the cartoonist, comic artist, had a podcast with a second person who I don't remember about just like trash that they love, and one of them, I think she's also written like a long essay about Belladonna of Sadness.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And I I should watch this thing because I also really enjoy Katie Skelly's work a lot. But as a this time flies so quickly. So as we're approaching the end of our little segment here, Matt, I have I suppose a question of every sort of like publisher, which is like, if you had a dream get, what is your dream get? You know, like
dream.
Well, you know what? Like, listen. How about this? And if they're the same thing, that's fine. But if they're two separate things, what is something that's like, if you had it, like, finally, someone has got to put this out in English, and I'm going to do it. And also, if it's a different thing, what is something very self-indulgently that you just want in English?
Good question. Oh, there are so many. What are we talking about here? So one series I would really see, came out years ago. Who did it? Comics One, maybe? Bride of Deimos. Yeah, I definitely want the rest of that to be republished. Personally, I'm more into, I want, like, we need more classic shoujo. We need more kids manga in general.
Yeah.
Koro Comics is actually something I really love, so anything from Koro would be a dream. They, focus mainly on kids manga. Nintendo's got a lot of stuff going in there as well. Pokemon, all that good jazz. Yeah, I mean, I would say that right there is about, what I'd want. Definitely more horror manga.
Yeah.
I'm not someone, I don't watch horror movies at all. I can't do that. I won't. But I can read it. I don't mind reading it. So definitely more horror manga.
Well, eventually they're going to run out of Jujutsu, and they're going to have to start publishing another author.
Yeah. It's like, oh, thank God. Hopefully they do it with Umez. They reprinted Drifting Classroom.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that happens.
I have a lot of feeling. Man, I want to. Okay, so this is you're almost baiting me into talking about one of these days. I have a comics podcast. One of these beautiful days, so I can talk about Drifting Classroom and things like that. It's very interesting. Are you familiar with The Woods? It's a recent comic. I think Boom put it out by James Tynion IV and others.
I'm not.
Basically the same premise, but with teens, like high schoolers, but like school transported to another world. And I think it's also like very different, like structurally and like, like thematically.
It sounds interesting. I mean, I'm going to have to look this one. What's it called? The Woods?
The Woods, yeah.
Okay. Can you send me? Okay.
Because James Tynion, like, it's way more about characters. I mean, Drifting Classroom is good, but there's not any characters in it.
No.
And so it's like it's way more about characters, or it's like, anyway, it's an infinitely queerer book because that's what James Tynion does, But I think it's interesting to compare works that are very similar, like structurally, and see like how what are the different approaches they took, and what does it mean for is this like a generational thing, and is this like a country of origin thing, and yeah, let's put out. Also, that shit is just wild. Like that when that kid's picking up the phone, that's like top page in comics. It's
No,
like,
I think that, not to go on too much of a tangent,
yeah,
but I think horror comics and manga specifically are extremely neglected in the West.
yeah,
We've missed out on a whole genre, just a whole collection of just great works. I'm very happy Junji Ito, is big in the West because he's kind of hopefully going to her manga,
yeah,
getting licensed, and I mean, I think it's starting to happen slowly.
yeah. I mean, the Drifting Classroom got like such a like a big, nice hardcover.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
I'm glad Viz did it justice. I really am. Um, so here's hoping that they do more as well. I mean, I know I plan on we have our first Hidashi Hino book coming out. It is a bit delayed. I do apologize on that, but
but that's the world we live in.
that is just the way it is. Unfortunately, I mean, it does look great. Keep in mind this book, was published in the '60s. We are using a copy of the original printing. So we did have to clean all that up, and then our letter Kelly is actually redoing the sound effects. She's doing them all by hand, so they look pretty good.
Yeah,
They look amazing, I should say. She's amazing at what she does. So yeah, it's definitely coming out well. I can say that we picked our next Hino title. I can't say what it is just yet, but
damn, I thought I secured exclusive, but maybe
no, not yet. First,
first
maybe we'll see. No,
first
not
the
yet.
first book has to come out.
Yeah, I'd say wait till the first one, then yeah, no, honestly, as soon as it starts shipping, as soon as I get the notification it's shipping to me, I'll probably announce it then. And I mean, for all we know, it could be two. We could announce two books. Could announce just one. We'll see what happens. But yeah,
Well, Matt, thank you for being here. We're gonna come back with a group segment in like, you know, wait, no, not a minute 50. What's 3:21? We got a little. I picked a little longer one. I tried to cap out at 3:30. But thank you for being here.
thanks, and
And
yeah, I'll stick around.
perfect. Everyone, I'll be back on the better half of 3:21. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was The Clash with Capital Radio 2. I once had a girl in Newbury Comics working there. Insisted I listen to the Mescaleros. Probably when I bought like Super Black Market Clash back in college, and I was like, sure thing. And I never did. But that's my exciting Newbury Comics story about how I think I've listened to Mescaleros like since then, like in recent years. But I was a college kid, and I was like, no, that's supposed to suck. Though I think the Clash is like a good intro if you're like give it to your friend who only listens to rock music and make them like, oh, you like the Clash? It's like punk music, and then slowly make them listen to like Sandinista, and they're like, I guess I just like all music now. It's tricking them. It's moving the goalposts into giving them different tastes. It certainly helped for a young burgeoning music douche that I probably was in high school, as so many of us are. Anyway, everyone else is here. I'm just rambling about the Clash now. But Matt and John are both here, and this is
Hey!
hello.
Hello.
The band that I try to get people into secretly is
Yeah.
Lingua Ignota, the greatest band that's ever existed, or greatest artist who's ever existed. And it's like, oh, hey, are you into metal? And they're like, no, not really. And I'm like, are you into opera? And they're like,
Ooh.
extra no. And I'm like, okay, are you into weird art projects about death gods? And they're like, hell yeah. And I'm like, welcome to Lingua Ignota.
Wait 1 second. I gotta type that into my old thing because I listen to a lot. Whoops! I clicked on the wrong thing and I started dragging my break GIF around.
Okay, my advice to you is to get really sad one day at Gen Con in Indianapolis, walking around during the largest role-playing game convention and be wandering around Indianapolis listening to Lingua Ignota and just like having a feel as the clouds move by. That's the way to get into
Oh
it.
wait, I do know this person. Never mind.
Hell yeah.
I do know this band. I recognize this Caligula
Hell
album
yeah.
art. Yes. Okay. Oh, and I think I've listened to Sinner Get Ready too, so I do know who this is. Never mind. But like I said, I listen to a lot of music. I don't always remember all their names.
Yeah, sure.
I think I peaked at like something like somewhere I think around 2,000 albums last year.
Wowza.
I just go to Bandcamp and I just click on daily and I just listen to all of it.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
Man. So Bandcamp recently put out an article about Audion. This is like this music magazine that's been going since like 1986, and like
I'll have to check it out.
It's beautiful. It gives me hope. Like just I'm gonna post in here. Just like look at this website. I'm gonna put it in the Discord. I also put it in the chat so the people we're not having a private conversation. It's like I'm like, huh? Like where can
Yes.
I'm like, where can I follow them? Oh, I can't. I can just go to their. How do I get a copy of this? I mail order it.
Yes.
Nice.
And there's just like I click retail is like these two dudes, these two fine blokes, you know, are just like we like weird music, and we've been putting out a publication of it since like '86. And I'm like, damn, dude, anything is possible.
Hell yeah. I've been trying to get indie RPG people into an amateur press association, which is like a way that they used to do like fanzines back in the day.
Yeah.
Where, you know, and this has exactly the vibe that I dream of.
I mean,
That kind of thing.
I keep threatening myself with starting small press comics in 2022.
Hell yeah.
Just like
Hey,
short, like singles and stuff like that, like cheap, like stuff I can do at a printer.
Hell yeah. Hey, so Matt, I was listening to your discussion, and I was interested in the fact that both of our topics today have to do with censorship, right? Or touch upon that subject. And I was wondering, like, and also like the ways that media has changed over the years and has become differently accessible. You were talking about like the online digital ways that people can access manga in a new way, right? So this is a really general question, so take this where you want to. But I'm curious about like how do you think that there's a relationship between like the digitalization of manga and like what has that opened up new pathways for like what can be expressed and what can be talked about in the format, or has that constricted like what people are able to do? Could you just talk about that for a second? I'm super interested.
I wouldn't. I definitely think it would definitely open more doors than anything. There are definitely more avenues to get that, especially self-publishing or posting on different platforms in general. Talking, I think, more on the Japan side of things. Definitely, we don't have them much here, but few artists that I work with directly post their works on different comic websites, and then they get likes and all that kind of stuff, and then they can monetize. And they're definitely able to draw something a little different, not as opposed to your standard comic that follows, your strong male protagonist, I guess you could say. No, definitely. I think the digital in general has opened doors. It's much cheaper, I would say, also in some aspects. But yeah, and for availability as well, I think it's being pushed out to more people that way. So definitely.
Yeah. There's something very similar that's been going on for a while in tabletop RPG land, where, and I think this relates to what you were saying about, or rather, the possibility of doing translations for stuff that might not have been translated before. That's sort of two thoughts at once. What I'm trying to get at is, now that more or less anybody can upload a PDF to lots of places, we now have small, punchy little 3-page documents, right? In a way that 20, 30 years ago, 15 years ago maybe, you absolutely couldn't get published because to get anything published, you had to have like a really robust like coffee table book of a game, right? That filled several pages and was worth getting printed, and you could convince somebody to print, right? Or you had to take on all of that huge cost by yourself. So there are like, old, great, weird, alt furry RPGs that no one ever bought, or like 2 people bought back in the day. But now you're seeing, I think that there's this like material shift to the PDFs has led to smaller games about much more personal topics. It's opened up a whole new sphere for like more queer games and things like that. And what interests me about translation is like in the circles that I'm in, it's not like super common, but it's not unheard of for people to just like fan translate a game, to be like, yo, I translated this into Portuguese, hope that's chill, here's the Portuguese translation of your game. And things like that. And I think that's super awesome. And it raises issues of like to what extent translation work, how much of that is a fan activity and how much of that is a thing that should be paid for.
Right.
That's a whole conversation, but I just think it's interesting.
It's especially common in the visual novel space in terms of like video games, where you'll see like a visual novel have like, oh, now we've got a Portuguese, now we've got a Russian, now we've got, such and such translations to visual novels. Probably because like maybe an ease of doing it in Ren'Py, plus like people are just, when people get passionate about visual novels, they get very passionate about visual novels. And I think because a lot of them also, like you're saying, they explore like these alternative queer spaces in a lot of situations. So people are like, oh, finally, some good food.
Yeah.
And what if my friends could read this? But I'm the only one of my Portuguese friends that can read English, so I have to bring it over myself, to roll up my sleeves and do my own damn work. And it's not like, most of these authors can't actually like afford translators themselves. So it's this weird it's this fan work and this understanding that like the author probably doesn't have the money to pay for it, but the people want to do it. And it's just like, it'll get scummy if you start to see some like companies like encouraging fan translations and that kind of thing, which I'm sure is already happening. Or like even manga, like how much of the, let's be honest, how many people at Viz are looking over at like manga decks or whatever and looking at the top manga and being like, should we license this?
I'm sure they are. I want to say 7 Seas, I think, maybe. I don't quote me on that, but it might have been them that mentioned that they look over fan stuff to see, what's being read and stuff like that. I mean, there's also, if you look at services like, Comic-E is one. They're a new reading. They do a lot. I mean, from what I'm reading, they do a lot of stuff that are, is pretty popular in the fan world, and they're able to get that released same day, or I don't know. They have that couple hours, the chapter's free to read, and after that it's the coin system. So, there's always been, I'm sure larger companies are looking at all kinds of data on what to license next. We definitely have a different market than Japan in a sense.
Yeah.
As much as we do, we don't. Isekai still does really well.
Yes.
Which I don't care for. I don't care for that one bit.
Listen, if Isekai publishes nice Umez hardcovers.
Yeah. Hey, to be fair, I talked about it with someone else before about Isekai. While it sells extremely well, and people seem to really like it, while a lot of people don't like it, it does. Those Isekai dollars are definitely help funding other things. Right. So it is much appreciated.
That's how you get a Kamen Rider hardcover.
Oh, exactly. Like that is definitely how we're getting that, because what was it? 7 Seas did a few years ago, and they did some of those classics, and if I recall, they said they didn't do too. The rumor was that they didn't do too well.
Oh, that's too bad, because I really like those.
Oh, I think they're great. I really do. I think they're great. That Super Sentai one they did was.
That is actually the only one that I don't have, because I'm.
I got that. See, I didn't get Kamen Rider yet.
I also don't have that one because I have less personal connection to like It that feels like one of those things that like I might like it, but I have like this inborn like distance to like tokusatsu and sentai kind of stuff where I'm like, oh, it's for kids. And
No, you gotta do it. If you haven't had a chance, whatchamacallit, factory that did the Kamen Rider Zero One. That's like the latest Kamen Rider, or one of the latest Kamen Rider series. They released it on in it. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I hear it's really good.
It's or it's similar to like how I feel about Godzilla, where it's like
I love Godzilla.
I need to watch it with a friend. It's very difficult to watch myself.
Oh, see, now I could watch Godzilla. I love. I liked the anime they just did. A lot of people didn't like it, but I enjoyed it.
I've only ever seen the original and Destroy All Monsters.
Good choices.
Yeah, and Destroy All Monsters was like if I was with a friend, these sleepy parts with humans talking about things, I could just we could work through that, and then the doofy the doofy wrestling in rubber suits.
It's great.
Is what I'm here for. Although I mean I've said it multiple times.
I'm also here for goofy wrestling in rubber suits. So
yeah. I have I deeply admire American professional wrestling, but never want to watch it ever.
No, me neither.
But I admire like.
Oh, you were talking about wrestling. Oh,
yeah. I mean both. I mean Godzilla is just professional wrestling. Let's be honest. It's just like guys in suits rolling around, and that's what you're there for.
Indeed.
Except for like the first one was trying to say something. At least. It's very interesting to watch the American version of it. I think it's it's a fascinating piece of film of how like they tried to shoehorn this American and they're like the one Asian actor they had in Hollywood. And they're like he's always in the corner of every scene, but it's like it's very interesting to watch them back to back. But yeah.
Hey Matt, I have another question for you.
Sure.
So I'm thinking about like I don't know you. I don't know your background, so correct me if I'm making some silly assumption. But like I'm wondering what it's like to be in a position as a kind of producer, curator, editor, your various titles, that's like explicitly about kind of importing a commodity from one kind of language sphere, one nation state into another, right? And how you negotiate in that work. Not on like the creative side of things, but in the like professional side of things. Oh, that's a horrible word. Let me back off of that. In the world of producing, like how are you and your team like negotiating language barriers and things like that? And I guess what I'm getting at is like in my work in RPGs, I know that there's like a cool scene of South Korean tabletop designers, and they are neat. And they do not speak English, and I would like to communicate. And I don't speak Korean, and I would like to communicate with them, and for the flourishing of the hobby art form across the board, right? And I know that there's various communities like that in the world. So I'm wondering just about like your relationship to, like the theoretical distance, to languages, and sort of negotiating all of that in the day-to-day work of your project.
Sure. So. In regards to negotiating, in general, okay, so I have a lead translator, Dan. We've been friends a long time. He is a great translator, and anytime I have questions or anything like that, I definitely call him or I'll send him the message, translate it for me. Contracts and stuff like that. Of course, are in Japanese, but yeah, definitely, I can give Dan a lot of the credit there because he helps me with communicating with authors. Some their English is decent, so that's pretty cool, and that's always fun. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely there is a language barrier. a lot of our communication is, email or some other sort of messaging. So you got to factor in the delays there, as well as getting it translated. So no, definitely. It's like the best part, I think, is the negotiating. I like doing that. So
Hell yeah. I hope to relaunch my tabletop scene soon, and one of the things that I want to do in that space is to highlight people from like linguistic communities that I'm not a part of, and that has raised questions for like how best to do that. Like, I'm thinking of a particular conversation I've had one time where a creator said like, yeah, I'd like to be in your magazine. This conversation I'm about to describe to you is happening essentially via interpreter at an online con, and they said something like, I'd love to be in the magazine, but like I don't think my English is good enough to write in English. And I was like, well, write in Korean. Like we'll figure that out somehow. And that has caused just like there's a bunch of questions like hovering around that I don't know how to answer. Things like, for example, how do I ethically pay a translator for my like tiny project?
Right.
right. No, I understand. I mean, that's definitely a question that like you were saying earlier, in regards to this as well. I mean, no matter what size of the project, I mean, someone's got to get paid. So yeah, I mean, I would say, look to find a translator. See, it's different on my end because I know, like I know people in the Japanese to English translation world and Chinese as well.
Sure.
But like I would say, try and find someone and see what their rates are. Check their references, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean they would have to assign their rate. I mean, yeah, it's I see what you're saying. No, I see what you're saying because it's like, how do you? What I get what you're saying there.
Yeah. Thanks for the advice about sort of approaching people. That is useful, but I guess I'm more curious about like I really want to publish the Korean text next to the translation, and people have said that they think that's a weird idea, and I'm not sure I understand why they think it's a weird idea. And like how do I approach editing a language I can't read? I just think there's a lot of big questions that I'm just sort of like raising up for my own, just thinking out loud about wanting to kind of do this kind of thing and just being like, that raises all these questions. Well, I'll have to think about it more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too familiar with tabletop games or anything like that, so I'm not sure how I like. Okay, so for manga, you would completely erase the Japanese text and put in the English text. I don't know how it is with games and stuff like that, though. Even if not, I mean, one way you could actually go about it would also be like a translation sheet, or like a companion. Just so it's all translated there, kind of thing. I mean, instead of having to actually.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know what you mean by it.
Or just like, okay, so like I've purchased a manga before that just has a little paper that's just a text translation. So then, yeah, so then there's no actual, having to do any editing that or the original text. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, I would assume I would just completely, English text only, or I mean, if you have room to put it next to each other, make it both in Korean and English, I wouldn't see what the issue. I mean, it wouldn't bother me any. I wouldn't think. Interesting.
I think sometimes people find
it's
sort of intimidating.
Yeah, no, like I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've never. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to like intentionally like saying, hey, there are other communities that exist, it's like a good approach to say, hey, well, you don't need to just put it all into English. Like you can have the Korean there as well, because then there's also maybe some like people who like speak Korean or like like Korean's their native language, so they can just like, I'll flip over to there, and like English English proficient people in the South Korean tabletop community. It's like, oh look, I get to read this one in Korean. I can get to read it in my native language.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a nice like touch of like crossing these, because I think a lot about international like developers and artists and everything, because I'm like in like 26 countries or something at this point. And I obviously tend to attract people who can speak a certain degree of English, because I work in English, and I only really have like a passing proficiency in Spanish, but I would not like advertise in Spanish,
Yeah.
But so it's like, I think there's a I like the idea of having them run side by side, especially if it's like, would it be like a game itself, like you're posting a game side by side, or is it like a more
Well, in my context, it's more like critical essays.
Right. I think an essay works a lot better side by side, because you don't have to worry more as much about the like, I think when you run a game, or when you print a game, there's certain formatting things that might be weird if you just run two things next to each other.
Yeah.
But I think for just like a critical essay, that works just fine. It might actually have a nice, cool visual appeal to these like multiple towers of text running concurrently. And some people can be like, oh, I can work side by. I think the most recent developer or most recent cover artist was Korean, and was like, we might have been machine translating back and forth. I'm not sure, or like very like. So it's a tricky thing if I have to learn how to. I mean, even if someone doesn't speak perfect English, you have to. I think it's important to teach yourself, like from the advanced privilege of people learning English all over the world. I think it's an important skill to learn how to speak. I don't know how you phrase it, but learn how to speak English as a second language, even though it's your native language. Like, learn how to undo your own tendencies of like taking for granted that you're a native speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think I would say like we need to be conscious of like decoupling ourselves from the idea of there being a perfect English, like that's a thing that exists.
Yes,
somewhere,
exactly.
Right? And that I take a lot of inspiration from the sort of language educational theory of translanguaging, which is about like we've all just got a bucket of word tools and we apply them in various places. And and I've got a bucket of half-remembered French words, and I can introduce myself in Arabic, and I can say I love you in Cantonese, and like here we are, let's go. Like we are, like I live on the internet. We are global. Maybe citizen is a bad word, but we're global inhabitants, right?
Right.
We just gotta, and here's what it is. It's like, I want the like super awesome knowledge of people who just happen to mostly speak languages that I don't understand. Right?
Yeah.
So I just want to be like, hell yeah, like you've got sweet ass thoughts, and I want them in my magazine, please.
Exactly, because
doing the intense solid of getting stooping down to my level so I can understand what you're talking about.
The thing that you don't get across the thing that doesn't cross language barriers is independent art very well, because like who's doing the work to translate it and to pay, or the pay translation? Nobody. So it's like there's like decades and centuries and millennia of independent art that just does not make it to the English speaking world because the money's not there,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's
the money's there. It's just in certain people's bank accounts.
Yes. They don't see that. They look at the numbers and go, they don't go up high enough for me, so I'm not going to spend it.
Right.
I want the numbers to be bigger. Yeah. We know what we're talking about when we say the money's not. It's not being spent properly.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, I definitely hear what you were saying about like translation needs and things like that. But I think actually art is one of the things that often transcends boundaries.
Yeah.
I think I live in the middle of a continent-sized country known as the United States of America, and where monolingualism is sometimes a virtue of people who are wrong. But what I'm trying to say is that like I think all over the world people are negotiating language boundaries on the fly all the time, and picking up stuff they can't read and then learning how to read it via engaging with it, right? And often art that is not monumental, art that can go in your pocket, art that is intimate, can cross nation state boundaries in ways that other things can't, often because of like dedicated networks of people who are pushing against state power and things like that. And I think that's awesome.
Yes. No.
More of that.
Yes, you were. once again with the hot takes on the independent art radio show, that independent art is very good, and it's like there's a reason that it's independent. How many $1 million indie tabletop community companies are there? Is that a problem in the indie tabletop scene as well?
Well, I mean, this opens the whole question of to what extent the word indie is even useful in at least my context,
right?
Because in tabletop land, like, okay, it's a very imagine a golf ball. Okay?
Yes. Okay. Got it.
That golf ball is theoretically the size of all. When I talk about like the weirdos on Twitter making tiny games by themselves that they're posting on itch, okay, that's the golf ball.
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons is the size of the Oort cloud that surrounds the solar system.
Gotcha.
In comparison, size-wise, as a thing. And in between there's not a lot of other things. There's a few maybe like number 2, number 3 companies, but they don't get bigger than like Venus.
Yeah. Your Chaosiums.
Yeah. So to what extent so compared to indie in this context, kind of just means like smaller, further away in size from D&D than you are.
Okay.
But also, like, if you're like one person sitting in your room pumping out third-party D&D content, are you an indie creator or not? If you are using certain companies' licenses, are you an indie creator or not? I think it's in a way indie becomes discursive. It just means like I'm trying to broadcast that I'm smaller than you.
Yes.
When that actually doesn't really like work out. And a friend of mine often says, who's the real indie creators are like the weird Jesus freak Christian game designers that literally no one talks to. They're not a golf ball. They're like a tardigrade on the surface of the golf ball. In terms of size.
Yeah, but they have their own tardigrades that they're friends with.
Yeah, and in my world, everybody who I think in a very common sense way, if you said like this is an indie creator, like very often they have worked with various companies of various sizes. I have, I've done writing for Pelgrane Press, and things like that. So I think indie is a really interesting word to think about and what it really means in the world that I'm involved in, as people like are constantly going through fluctuations of are they their own boss? Are they a hobbyist? Are they a contractor? Did they start a little company? Is that company doing well? What does that mean? If you're a little company but you just got a big Kickstarter, are you indie? What does that mean?
Right, or do you have to wait for the Kickstarter to run its course and see where the money is? And if you have no money left, does that mean you're indie? And if you have money left, does that mean you're no longer indie?
Yeah, and I think like in music, indie can sometimes imply actually like not a social position, but an aesthetic.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an indie aesthetic in RPGs quite analogous to like indie pop music per se.
Right.
Right.
Which in itself goes through cycles.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a long rant about the word indie.
No, yes, it's something I think about a lot.
Yeah, and I just find that in some of the, I'm not saying this applies to every world, but in my world, on my golf ball, it's often a word that is like actively anti-meaningful.
Yes.
It's like subtracting the meaningful content from the sentence it is uttered in.
Right, because it's throwing you into like a big pool that doesn't really have any inherent meaning to it.
Yeah.
It's just it's a handy marketing term. But what a handy marketing term it can be.
It can be, right? I mean, I deployed it right when I started talking about myself. It gives people a sense of what I'm talking about that then I have to deconstruct.
Now the word indie is flashing at all times on this very show.
Yep.
Across this very Twitch stream, but it's all good stuff, It's all good stuff. It's all discourse. Maybe. Sorry, I was like, oh man, I heard someone running around. I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna get food soon. Nice. And my brain started doing different mathematics real quick. but I've recovered myself. I'm back. I've
Hey, Matt, what would you say the like very big picture structural shape of like the world that you work in is? Like, are there several big players? Is it all tiny independent co-ops? Like, what's it look like structurally?
I mean, like for manga publishing in general, or
Maybe, but I'm probably more interested in like the kind of translator, importer, popularizer work that you're doing. Does that make sense?
so like we are definitely okay. So there are a lot of smaller, or I should say, excuse me, there are not a lot of manga publishers, specifically like myself, Starfruit Books, of course, and then we all. So like, there's also a Ray Books. They do a lot of small press comics or manga per se. Otherwise, I would say no. They're a digital one called Iridori. They do doujinshi, which are they work directly with the creators like we do. Is they do more that. However, no, it's generally more of a cookie. Not, I would say almost like a cookie cutter industry. They only stick to what sells and they don't take those risks, kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that's one thing I like about being small. We are able to take those risks. We are able to, negotiate with the author and tell them, hey, can we do a smaller print run on this? And most of them are fine with that. One of our works is called Toki. It is about 60 pages. It is about a midwife in Japan. Talks about delivering babies in Japan right before that war happened, and they changed medicine. So it was something that probably would never get any kind of release. However, we did do a edition of it, sold really well, and we'll probably do a print version of it as well because the author really wants to, and I definitely think we found a market or a space for it rather. So that's pretty cool.
Hell yeah. Do you think the word indie applies in a meaningful way to what you do?
I would say yes. I did like what you say, like, what is the word indie? I agree with you on that. But yeah, I would say the word indie does apply here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, I think it has like a common sense meaning that like I can say to my mom and she has a sense of what I mean. My mom's a sweet lady. I'm not trying to get rag on my mom about not but she's like, oh yeah, I get it. Like you don't have an office building, and then we go from there. And then I'm like, well, actually, who has an office building anymore? Anyway, sweet, hell yeah. Gosh, now I want to read more. Now I want to read more manga.
No, yeah. So I mean, I like that question earlier. They said about our Hideshi Hino work. So Hideshi Hino is a horror author. He's been around since the '60s, and he has one of the, I guess you could say, one of the founding fathers of horror manga. He had some works released back maybe in English, like late '90s, maybe early 2000s, that are terribly out of print, and definitely some crazy works. And he's been neglected all these years, and we're really fortunate to be working with him. Kind of shocking that his work has not been released in English in all those years, and kind of did, but kind of glad for our sake because we can kind of get that train going again. So yeah, I think that's one. I've had a few comic shops reach out to me. I won't say who just yet. That would like to buy. They don't carry much manga, but they are interested in his works and would like to get a handful of copies. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm super excited about like the angle of your work that's like not quite archival, but being like, here's the thing that's been ignored. Let's give it a platform.
Yes, exactly. And that is, I think it's, the manga market in the West especially has been cherry picked. I mean, we get a sliver of what came out in Japan. Actually, I read a great something on Twitter today from Ed over at he's a publisher who runs Denpa. They're an amazing publisher, one of my favorites actually. And he said something. So the new thing now, not new, but something that's happening are Japanese companies getting into translation, editing, localizing their own comics to release in English. However, what they're doing is doing it as like a digital only or kind of like a blanket license. Like they own the works, why would they give them out to anyone else, kind of thing. But they're not then allowing other companies, then other publishers won't be able to get anything from that imprint because their parent company is releasing stuff in English, even if they don't touch that specifically. So it's definitely an interesting game that's happening. Because I reached out to a publisher about a work actually that they said no because of something similar to what I just said. So that was kind of interesting to read that. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting market.
Neat.
Yeah, and there's I disappeared for a moment. I've returned. I had food. Wait, yes, food came in. So, and I mean, there's also to some extent like it's less common, but there are like circles of like independent manga publishers or authors just like publishing their own self-publishing in English.
Mm-hmm.
I had just kickstarted I think it was called Boyish like last month I think it was, which is like some butch anthology.
Yeah, it's definitely I think it's great. I think that first of all, giving the artist a direct source, they don't have to worry about they're hopefully getting a decent amount for their what they're selling, as well as the creative control. I think that's extremely important because I mean manga's better now than what used to come out with just the crappy editing in regards to sound effects and redrawing and stuff like that. Just how terrible some of the stuff came out. I think that if some of the artists knew beforehand, I don't think they'd be too happy.
Yeah.
I like I said, the artists we get to work with are they love that they get a say so in the editing, and they get to say yes or no on everything really. So it all works out. I think it's good to have that connection there. But yeah, no, I think that more and more we will see that. I think that's gonna be a great trend that's happening, selling and their own, trying to get some sort of funding for an English edition.
Yeah, because their like indie market is also. I mean, the whole comic market is their comic market. Japanese comic market is very different than the English comic market.
Mm-hmm.
Like the magazine system is so radically different than how things operate in the U.S. So it's like how something I've thought about often is like how common is like the graphic novel in Japan. Like the idea of like a singular work, non-serialized, is published as like a 150 to like 300 page book that just comes out.
Probably more. I mean, like independently, like without a publisher,
or even with a publisher.
I mean, they get a lot of one volume things.
Okay, and they're but like not really serially, just like released as a singular, kind of like what Drawn and Quarterly and Fantagraphics usually put out.
Yeah, I love everything they put out. Yeah, I mean, of course, stuff gets published in magazines as well. Like, yeah, but that's good. I would like to see the numbers on that.
Yeah, it's something I think about because I feel like a lot of times when I see them, like, oh, these feel like they're discrete chapters. And like, oh, this is probably published in like Beam or something,
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like a feels more like it's an adult story and it's a single volume. And it's not like, it's not, you don't see the shonen whatever formula running through it.
Yeah.
And you get something that's like,
there's also think of like magazines as well. That's true. I didn't think about that. Like Torch, through Lead, they've got some great, very unique things on there. Yeah, no.
That's.
I always forget about online magazines too.
Part part of. I mean, I'm learning the language partially because like I want to. It's like it's very important to like, hey, if I'm gonna do a lot of this independent game publishing stuff, it's probably important that I can at least partially speak a language of a country that puts out a lot of video games historically.
Right.
You know.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm not like completely Japanese illiterate.
Yeah.
I can read a little bit. Not I'm not saying much. But yeah, no, it's definitely, grasp or at least understand how stuff works, kind of thing.
But I'm also very selfish, and I just want to read a lot of weird indie comics on like Pixiv or whatever.
No, yeah, there are tons of great ones on there.
But I can't be forever at the mercy of whatever some like fan translation circle wants to put out. You know.
Have you checked out what are the Red String translations? They work directly with and post on Twitter, I think.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, they'll post directly, I think, on Twitter, and it's just like usually shorter, like 4, 5, 6 page Twitter manga, but like with the author, with the permission kind of thing, and for free, of course. And I think those are pretty. They've got some pretty cool ones sometimes. Comedy, I think a lot of them are comedy, or some scary ones, but.
I definitely had like a moment where it was like, well, what if I kind of publish those sorts of things, and try to figure out, because I occasionally run comics, sort of, I have in my history, and I worked with Glacier Bay to put out like a 1-page from Kai Hiroka, I think it was, like back in like forever ago at this point, and I'm like, that was really neat. Like a kind of distinct creative thing, but I was like, language barriers, so I don't have translators on staff because I am barely on staff.
Yeah, no, my personal opinion is even if it's, if go big, if you want to go big, go big. If you want to go stay small, go small. I mean, do it. Why not?
That's why I think that's important. I think that's what everyone's kind of like. That's part of what everyone is like. Why everyone's doing this stuff now, because everyone's just like talking to each other and like, oh yeah. Well, someone's like, you should do it, and someone's like, well, I should do it. And then it turns out it's a lot easier to do things than you thought they were. You don't need like marketing strategies and like brands and everything all the time. You can just like put shit out and people will be like, yeah, they put it out. And that's so sometimes all it takes is like, you saying, yeah, I should do it, and then that'll rattle around the back of my head, and then I'll be like, oh, what if I do it? Because like I encourage people constantly to like, hey, you should. That's part of like the pilot project I sort of want to start, where it's like I put out one Indiepocalypse for your community, and then you're on your own, do your own thing, because like having more indie game like publications and everything is like only good. Like
hell yeah.
It's like it's not competition. It's like because how many independent manga are there? How many indie tabletop designers are there? Like you would you would need infinite resources to be the only one, but like having more people in your field also benefits because it encourages more people to like, oh well, if there's like 7 indie manga publishers, there's more room for a person to be like, no, I only read independent manga. That's all I buy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, smaller. Myself, Glacier Bay Books is a smaller publisher, like I said, and even more quote unquote commercial ones, like let's say Kaiten Books,
right, or like New York Comic Review,
right, New York Comic Review, stuff like that. Like, there's no competition with. Like there is enough to eat. Like there is plenty out there. And I mean, Glacier Bay and I a lot of the times do our announcements together.
Yeah.
For stuff like that, just because we share some of the same audience. So why not get it out there? Yeah, no, I think that's definitely I think manga in general, we're seeing even bigger publishers, 7C, let's say 7Cs or any of them, they're picking up titles that we probably wouldn't have seen them pick up. Kind of getting a little more diverse in their titles. I mean, the need and want for more LGBTQA titles. I mean, they're selling like crazy, and I mean, rightfully so.
Yeah.
People want the stories. People have been wanting that, asking, and we're finally getting them. I mean, Boys Love and Girls Love. I can't really speak for Girls Love, but I would assume does decent. But it is still neglected.
Yeah.
Boys Love, of course, is finally picked up. Needs to get going.
Yeah. And even like Seven Seas, I think it's Seven Seas is even like even going like one step further, and they're sort of like, it's sometimes, I think it's them, are like sometimes consciously differentiating between this is LGBT and then but this is boys love, girls love kind of stuff, because it's like generally, there can be a difference where it's like this feels like,
Mm-hmm.
as someone who came up in like the yaoi days, I have a certain like hesitation. I'm not unlike Tokusatsu, like where I'm like BL. That's for the yaoi paddle people. as even as a man with proclivities towards other men, I'm like, this is not for me.
No.
And then like there's so I guess what's like what's a good BL for a guy who thinks it's for the straights?
Oh, I don't know.
Who is like immensely put off by it often, even though
I think, like, I read BL, but like, I mean, I like guys, so I don't mind.
No, I mean the same. That's why I dislike it sometimes.
So okay, so actually, it is. I guess it's BL, but it's comedy also. I would highly recommend one. I have to get the name right because I get it wrong all the time. They actually did a drama, live action, and it's hysterical. What is it? 30. Cherry Magic.
Okay.
Have you heard? Cherry Magic, 30 Years of Virginity to a Wizard. Okay, it's funny as shit. I really enjoyed it. It was very like light. It was cute, very cute, I would say.
Yeah.
Definitely check that one out if you can read that.
Because listen, let's be honest. I read a lot of it. I was talking about my copy of Passion of Gengoro Tagame that I have.
Oh right, definitely. No,
yeah,
no.
I have. I'm dropping Midnight on Apollo. I'm well versed, but it feels like there's a vibe a lot of it gives off that's like, and I think part of it is growing up in that era of like what I think of as the yaoi paddle era, that it's like poisoned my brain into thinking that it's like a very specific thing,
Yeah, we have yaoi and shonen.
Yeah, where it's like a very specific fetishized thing that it's
is it sexy enough to be yaoi or not?
Yeah, exactly. Do they have special yaoi holes or is this actually about men who are interested in each other?
Yeah, no, it's just some weird fantasy.
Yeah, which is...
I'm going to tell you about the story now, because I don't know when I will have the context to tell this story to anyone else. So when I was, I don't know, I must have been like 11, I don't know. And I was with my mom, and we went to a mall that might have just been, it had the feeling of a dying mall, but it might have been just been built, or like it was the last new mall built in rural Missouri before they all started dying, right? And so I was there with my mom, and there was this store. I don't even know what the store was. It wasn't like a game store. It wasn't like a bookstore. It was just like a store with some stuff in it. And I'm in there, and then in the back of the store, there's this rack of T-shirts, just like black T-shirts with words written on the front of them in like impact font, right? And one of them is yaoi. And my mom, I'm like old enough that my mom like lets me sort of hang out here a little bit by myself while she goes and does something. So I like go to the lady behind the cash register, and I very meekly am like, "Yo, how much does that T-shirt over there cost?" And she's like, "What? You're a child?" And I'm like, Yeah, what's going on? And there's no like punchline to this story. I'm just trying to express to you like this was one of the very first times I like contextually came out to someone as a very young person.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm old enough to know that I'm a big old homo and I'm interested in this stuff on the internet. I don't really understand it, and I know that like it's in this room and it's illicit and I can't let my mom see it, but could you, oh purveyor of forbidden knowledge, like tell me about it? And we just had this moment where I think she figured out what was going on and was like, yeah, that's a t-shirt about like a sex thing.
Yeah, you'll.
And we just had this moment, and I'm just like, thanks for that lady, whoever that lady was. Good on you.
Yeah, someone has to shepherd the young kids into the exciting world of t-shirts they'll regret owning in 10 years. I had a weird memory. I was thinking as I was driving the other day about, I don't know why this popped, but now it is popping into my head now, like, once again, because you're talking about like early brushes with like a child understanding queerness, And I remember when we moved out of our house, or like the first house that I remember living in, the people who bought it from us, there was, to my memory of being told this from my parents as like a 10-year-old, that it was a lesbian couple bought our house, and one of them had a knife collection, the other one had a Barbie collection.
Hell yeah.
And that like cemented an idea in my brain. Like never. I'm like, am I a 10-year-old? Is 10-year-old Andrew understand the concept of butch and femme, but he just doesn't get it yet. But he kind of gets what it means. But anyway, weird brushes as a child was like, oh no, this stuff always exists, except.
No, like I had a friend who had her aunt was a lesbian. Well, she was actually my girlfriend at the time. And she had a aunt that was a lesbian, and they just said like, "Oh, her aunt's." And it was like just understood. Like you want to, like we'd go over to her,
Yeah.
And like it was just like understood, and we were like, "Oh, that's chill," Like, but it definitely helped, everyone involved. It's pretty cool.
One of those shared bed roommates that we all have.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. My boyfriend just showed me a picture of his a few months ago, when things were a little chiller given the global emergency. His grandparents came and visited in our new apartment, and they took all these pictures, and he just showed me a picture of they both of his grandparents made separate scrapbooks that include pictures of their time in our apartment. And I had this whole like moment about like queer adulthood and like grandparents who were chill about it, and my like anxiety about never having come out to my grandfather, and oh my god, I fractaled into another reality for a second, and then came back out of it and was like, that's cute.
Yeah. It's
Hell yeah. What a great time that we have these three queer people here talking about indie shit.
Yeah,
Hell yeah. And shout out to all the weird old roommates of the past.
Yeah, we're starting to get more of them. It was what a world when I was like, because growing up, like, I'm very post, like, to get, you know what? No, I want to close the show. Let's not get serious for a moment, because I was gonna go. We're cresting 2 minutes. Let's not talk about giant health crises, and thinking that they will never go away, and then realizing they're kind of going away. But or they're not as bad as you were always growing up to be in the to understand them to be, or whatever. But we're cresting 2 hours, so we're gonna close this show down. It's been a good show. Glad to have you both here. We're gonna, of course, before we close the show, this is a podcast, and a radio show, so it means you do have to promote your works, like in like a nice soundbite version, as opposed to the versions that you've been casually doing up to this point. So I'm gonna go in a circle around the horn. Actually, you know what? Kind of gonna ask a tricky question before we go. Now that you've both been here with me for 2 hours, do you know what Indiepocalypse is?
I believe that Indiepocalypse is a project you are spearheading that highlights games made by small publishers. Am I correct?
We're gonna let Matt try. Let's see
No,
if he closest without going over. Price is Right rules.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that, but I was gonna say it. Correct. It's digital, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Indiepocalypse is a. You know what? You'll learn in a second when I do my plugs.
Because I know, like, it comes with a PD, like a zine.
Yes.
But then there are games as well going along with it.
So Indiepocalypse is a bundle of 10 curated independent games, be they digital or physical.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, I commission one every month now for like a year. Yeah. I got as a little spoiler, we have an indie tabletop game coming up for next month. That is the very first of its kind. I had not yet commissioned a tabletop game, mostly because I feel like tabletop people got their shit together more than video game people.
Wild thought.
It feels like, I mean, just because of time, you know, even the time. It feels like well, literally nobody gets paid in like indie video games, but a couple people are getting paid $2 to $3 in indie tabletop games.
I'm thinking about, my size metaphor earlier about golf balls and clouds. I'm trying to think about like all possible space within the universe at the point of its greatest expansion, and that's the size of video games.
Yes, well. Independent video games are like they're like the little penny you put down to mark where your golf ball used to be.
No, they are independent video games are the size of the nebula-like cloud of galaxies in this sector of the universe.
Well, I guess when I say independent, I mean your DIY independence. Is that similar in golf, where indie video games, as you know it, are people who used to work for like Electronic Arts and then decided to take their war chest and found an indie studio.
Hell yeah.
Of 20 people. But
nice. All right. My name is John Harness. Hello.
John, tell me about your shit.
Check out Knucklebone Magazine. I've been promising people for a year when the next issue will come out. It hasn't come out yet, but in the near future, issue 3, Knucklebone Magazine, writings about tabletop games. And then also, until the end of the month, check out the fucking censorship bundle on itch.io. You can buy it for $10 to support incarcerated sex workers and say fuck you to censors in the game world. And also join the Sex Games Jam if you feel like it. Thanks for having me on the show.
Matt, what have you got?
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Hosh, Starfruit Books, of course. Twitter, check us out, Starfruit Books. Our website, starfruitbooks.com. Remember, we are a smaller publisher that works directly with artists. Therefore, they get a nice chunk of each purchase. So please consider checking us out. And thanks for having me. It was a great time. Thanks for listening.
Perfect. I will say, Indiepocalypse, I'd recommend you buy it. No one in this, usually I would say to buy specific issues, but no one in this chat but me is going to get any of the money from these sales of Indiepocalypse. But I would recommend you buy any of the 25 issues I have available for sale. I even have I did a hot collab with Koosh Comics even, where we put out a joint issue where they provided David over at Koosh provided 4 or 5 rather comic artists, and I provided 4 game developers, and we mashed them together and they jammed out ultimately 4 games, which is a neat project that I like. But you can submit your stuff. That's another wrinkle, another wrinkle to Indiepocalypse. You can actually submit to it anytime if you made a game to indiepocalypse.com/submit. Entries are always open. You can submit other stuff. Maybe I keep reducing the number of zine contents I put in there because I kind of spin them off into other things and get more ambitious with them. Like my, it has comics, but I haven't looked at them for a while because I'm like, what if I just took a little bit of money and I just became a small press publisher? and just like put up
Yeah.
weird shit. Now that like stores are opening, or for better or for worse, things are opening recklessly in the American style. But buy it. It's good. There's a Patreon. I have a Patreon, indiepocalypse.com/Patreon, where you can get. There are so 2 new additions. One, at the $5 level, you now get the commissioned games, not the full issues each month, but you get the singularly commissioned game that comes out each month. So that's like $5 a month for like a cool new game. Some of them have won awards even. Issue 16's Much Harped Upon Winter, the gold medal winner at the Sydney Queer Games Festival, somewhere in Australia. I think it was Sydney. But there's many more future award winners in these things, top shelf games, I would say. I've also clicked that button that lets you do annual subscriptions, so you can also just buy it once and you save like 16%. That's it. That's the show. That's all my pitches and my plugs. Until next week, thank you, Matt. Thank you, John, once again. And as we say every Indiepocalypse radio closing, I'm transitioning to the end of the show with the last song, and I am opening up all my windows so I can find the right ones that I'm looking for. There you are. As we say, Andy, at the end of every episode of Indiepocalypse Radio, there you are, Fubar 2000. I was looking for you. Goodbye. It's imposter syndrome,